Welcome, everyone. It's 5:45, so we will go ahead and call the pre-meeting to order. And first, I want to thank Councilman Kimna for running that last council meeting while I was out of town. So we will start with a Councilwoman Ward will do our prayer, and then have a written pandemic update here. We do have a public hearing, so Mr. Sanders can give us a rundown on that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This hearing pertains to a bill that was introduced at the last council meeting regarding murals and some changes regarding the spacing, the location of to the right-of-way, and churches, and some other minor tweaks to that. Be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions on that item? And item 8, we'll run down all our committees for the usual announcements. Any questions on item 11, consent? And bills introduced, number 76, Ms. Miller.
Yes, Madam. This is a supplemental for the workers' comp. When we got to year end and going through the audit, this is provision for unsettled claims for the year, so it's in the amount of $200,000.
Any questions? Right, and number 77, Mr. Maresh.
Thank you. This is basically a grant agreement amendment to extend the time on our grant with Modot for Airfield lighting, which has been done for a little while, but needed the time extension so they could make the final reimbursement payment to the city.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? And number 78, Chief Schrader, or I'm sorry, Captain Wilde.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This will be a request for supplemental appropriation from the drug forfeiture justice funds for the purchase of 2 pieces of equipment, one being bulletproof shields and the other drone patrol use.
Questions? And number 79, Mr. Mullman.
Thank you. This is an ordinance that approves a development plan, development agreement, tax abatement of Chapter 350 project known as Project 10 Pin at 2017 Christie Drive, Bowling and Entertainment Center.
Any questions? Okay. Bills pending, number 75, we will have taken up. Resolution 23, Mr. Mullman.
Thank you. This is a substitute resolution to award a real estate broker services contract to the Beth McGeorge team.
Questions? And number 24, Captain Wilde.
Thank you again. This would be a request for permission to implement a personnel recruitment and retention plan with incentive to prospective police officers and communications operators.
Any questions? And number 25, Mr. Mullman.
This is a resolution that would approve an agreement with Cole County for the construction or for the administration of a grant for construction of at the corner of McCarty and Adams.
Thank you. And we do have Commissioner Otto here, County Commissioner, so I appreciate you being here for that item tonight. So any questions, or would you like to, if there's anything you want to add, or if there's any questions, we could certainly call on you. Wonderful. Okay. Okay, we appreciate that, Commissioner Otto. And when we come to that item, that resolution, if you want to say that in the mic, you certainly can, that the commission approved that, and then we can take that up. Thank you for being here for that. And then, let's see, 16, if we have anyone else signed up, and then we'll go to item 18, our new business. Mr. Molman, will you be addressing that item? And then I believe we have Michelle with us as well, Ms. Wessler from Housing Authority as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for being here too. Appreciate it. Any questions on it here? Do you want to give us a brief summary?
Sure. City Council previously heard a request for some public funding related to a redevelopment at 101 Jackson, essentially rehabbing that building back into a multifamily use. Group making the proposal, Transformational Housing, has amended their proposal to the Housing Authority for acquisition and has removed that request for public assistance. So essentially what we have now is a fairly cash transaction. I believe out that they're offering for the still $1,000. Yeah. So it's really just the only difference is the removal of that public financial participation in the property.
Okay, any questions?
Which,
Mr.
which is consistent with what we've done in the past, is
What's that now?
which is consistent with the way we've done it in the past.
What is consistent with what we've done in the past?
The transitional housing with the component that we were.
Yeah, we haven't financially participated in any of these projects up at.
And then this, Michelle, you're welcome. And then we had the Housing Authority meeting this morning. I know Councilman Fitzwater, along with Councilman Lester, who's the liaison, were on that as well. Welcome, Michelle.
I think what you were asking is this like our normal transactions that we do where we don't ask you for any funding to help in the purchase? And yes, that's true. This is like a normal transaction where somebody's offering to buy purchase the property, and we develop a redevelopment agreement with stipulations on the time periods to get the board.
Sounds good. So Councilman Fitzwater? That would be Mr. Sanders?
Sure, I'll give a start and probably ask Rachel to chime in too. But we started this process, I believe, last summer by what the needs are, which is similar to what the started this morning, in fact. So we did a lot of public involvement, and public participation plan, and what showed up as a need is housing, basically housing, all types of housing, and this meets one of those goals in terms of public facilities or community services, which is part of the national objectives of the CDBG HUD program. Also, access to healthcare was one of them too. So that's how that project got on there. We did a call for projects. We had 4 projects submitted. 2 of them were selected as meeting the requirements and selected to move forward, and this is one of them. There is no action on the council side. It's a pass-through, similar to county side. So be awarded, if it is awarded, sort of doing the application side.
We do. The answer is the processes have happened to overlap, but they're not designed to overlap. So transformational housing could have applied for the funding for any property or any development but they selected 101 Jackson. So I think that's why it gets complicated because you've got housing authority and the redevelopment plan versus what they could have applied for as a nonprofit entity to create a transitional housing. They're kind of separate processes, but that help.
Question is, if they apply for the funds and the facility that they're requesting to use those funds on, it ends up that it's can't be, what happens to the dollars?
So there's a couple options and it depends on where it lands. You could ask for to your scope, and that would include addition if need be. That is an eligible activity under the state CDBG-CV program. Otherwise, there would be a payback of funds by transformational housing.
Sorry, my mic's off. If you want to mention that about the
Yes,
meeting.
it
about
did
the-
pass unanimously this morning with the Housing Authority Board.
Okay, and even though we'll know that, it might be good for the public to know, or when it gets to that point, it's debated more. So certainly, and then I know you were here for the Q&A in the previous meetings, and so if council has any questions, we'll ask you or Mr. Molman or Mr. Sanders or Ms. Senzi. So thank you. And we're going to be on item 19. Ryan, do we still need the closed session? We may not need that.
It's a placeholder for the city council. There are some issues that I've outlined in some closed memos. If the city council wants to take those up and ask some questions in closed session, that's why it's there. But if it's not needed, then we can all go home.
Okay. And Mr. Kroll?
Would we need to answer that question before the end of the meeting?
Sorry, answer what question?
Whether we need to have a closed session or not, since they are related, are they related to some items on the agenda?
There could be some, if the city council wants to have a closed session on any of the items on the agenda, then I would say that a motion to amend the agenda to make item after the closed session would be appropriate. But that is only if the city council wants to do that. From a city staff perspective, we are on everything on the agenda. So it's just kind of a matter of the comfort level of the city council as it relates to the items that I wrote in closed session. So, but from a staff perspective, nothing needs to be discussed in closed session to move forward with it.
So having that as a placeholder, are there any questions of council on that process if any council member wanted to do that? Thank you. I have one other procedural question on the resolution 23 for the real estate. Mr. Molman, would Emily first read the original resolution from last time and
Yeah.
then we substitute it?
Yeah,
Just making sure.
there'll need to be two votes, one to take up the substitute and then the resolution as substituted.
So we'll start by reading the original and then we'll do, if somebody would make that motion for the substitute and have the second vote, the first vote on accepting the substitute. All right, thank you. Any other questions before we adjourn and start the regular? I will call this meeting adjourned. It's 5:59, so we'll sit tight for a minute and then get started. You have Councilman Vogt, who has been joining us there virtually. So thank you. No. Welcome, everyone. Before we begin the council meeting, we will have a prayer by Councilwoman Ward, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
God, thank you for everyone gathered here safely this evening. Thank you for all the blessings bestowed upon us on this beautiful day. May we be guided to lead with humbled hearts and informed minds. Help us to be patient and understanding when we don't understand, but give us the courage and strength to learn and make decisions for everyone we serve. As our community continues to struggle with COVID, let us be mindful that we are all affected differently. For those serving on the front line, families dealing with hardships and loss, and those teaching our children, our thoughts and prayers go out to you for continued strength, comfort, and support. We thank all of our city staff who work to make our city run smoothly and improve our quality of life, especially our police and fire personnel who risk their lives to keep us safe each and every day. In your name we pray.
To the flag, States of America, to the republic that stands.
Welcome, everyone. I will now call to order the Tuesday, January 18th City Council meeting. You can also join this by call-in or virtual. The meeting number is on the agenda at jeffersoncitymod.gov. Mrs. Donaldson, roll call, please.
Fitzwater,
Present.
Hensley,
Present.
Kimna,
Here.
Lester,
Here.
Schreiber, Spencer,
Here.
Spicer,
Present.
Vogt,
Here. Here.
Ward, here, Wiseman.
Present.
Item 3, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? I think that's all in favor. So motion passes. I think that was a yes. Sorry, a little delay there. Item 4, miscellaneous agenda items. We have a pandemic update like we do at every meeting. Ms. Campbell and Ms. Chesney Schulte, neither was able to attend. They both had conflicts this evening, so they have submitted a written report from the Cole County Health Department. So I will share that now. It says the COVID pandemic update as of January 18th. Statewide COVID cases continue to be higher than they have been at any other time during the pandemic. Hospitalizations have increased, deaths have not. The Omicron variant is the dominant variant in central Missouri now and likely responsible for the increase in cases. We do anticipate that as quickly as they climb, that hopefully they will also fall. The Omicron variant seems to be causing less severe illness, so we do not anticipate as many hospitalizations or deaths. Because of a reporting issue with a local healthcare system that resulted in a backlog of data, the Cole County Health Department is receiving a large number of positive COVID-19 cases from Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services. These cases will be reflected in the daily updates and will be added to the test date data charts over the next few days. The positive cases date back to the first part of December. Statewide data can be seen at health.mo.gov under Learn About COVID-19. www.colehealth.org has the most recent COVID-19 case information for Cole County. With an increase in respiratory illnesses, including influenza and COVID, the local healthcare organizations have been busy with sick clients. Both hospitals are reporting a high patient census and staff shortages. There are other viruses, illnesses in the community, which is exacerbating the clinic and hospital situation along with staff shortages. Remember to boost your immune system health by taking your vitamins, drink plenty of water, eat a balanced diet, exercise, and get adequate sleep. We would encourage those with symptoms to stay home and distance from others who have underlying health conditions. If people are experiencing severe symptoms and need medical care, they should reach out to their primary care physician first. Consider utilizing a telehealth option if you can. People should also have a plan in place for illness, like having over-the-counter medications on hand that they prefer that could alleviate their symptoms. All the healthcare organizations are offering testing and vaccines in the doctor's and clinic's office daily. COVID-19 vaccines are available at the Cole County Health Department on Thursdays. and at most retail pharmacies daily. There is an ample vaccine supply in our county for those who would like to receive a vaccine. Local healthcare providers have requested that parents of children aged 5 to 11 call their primary care physician or pediatrician to schedule a vaccine appointment. If you have traveled recently, please distance yourself for at least 5 days upon return and monitor for symptoms. This follows the CDC's new recommendation for quarantine and isolation. Those new guidelines can be found at colehealth.org on the new blue sheet that will be handed out to those being tested for COVID-19 in Cole County. Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services is hosting another free testing event this Sunday, January 23rd at the American Legion on Tanner Bridge Road from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. No pre-registration or appointment is needed to receive a test. Please contact the Cole County Health Department if you have any questions. So thank you to Ms. Campbell at the Cole County Health Department for supplying that update. Are there any questions on the update? All right. Item 5, public hearings. We will have Bill 2021-75.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending Chapter 3, Article 3 of the City Code of the City of Jefferson pertaining to murals and murals permit processing.
Mr. Sanders.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. About 20 years ago in 2001, there was a major overhaul to the sign code, of which the mural code is part of. That's the last major update we're aware of. This update has gone through the Cultural Arts Commission, to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and is coming before you for consideration. The purpose of the mural code is basically to ensure that the mural is not a sign, not advertising. It's to make sure the mural is not obscene and that it meets certain design construction standards regarding location, lighting, materials, and whatnot like that. With this code update, some of the major changes pertain to, let's just say, churches and schools being permitted to have murals. That goes back to the original sign code, was using zoning districts as boundaries. And they basically, in the original code, said murals are permitted only in commercial and industrial areas. This revision of the sign code, mural code, would allow murals in mixed-use zones and also churches and schools in residential areas. This code section also changes the distance at which two murals can reside from each other. Originally, that was put in code as no closer to 500 feet. We cannot find any reasoning of why that was put in the code, just like with omitting churches and schools. We could not find any research that led to why those decisions were made originally. Certainly, there were comments in the Cultural Arts Committee about how those limitations could be barriers to putting up more murals in places where people may actually want them. So the idea is to loosen some of those restrictions up so that you can have more than one mural on a city block, perhaps. Another change is, which is also coming from the sign code. Right now, signs are not permitted to extend out from a building over a zero lot line more than 12 inches. And murals also have that same requirement. They cannot exceed out from a building 12 inches on the zero lot line. The building is basically on the property line. It was felt that that also may restrict murals. So if the applicant gets a permissive use of right-of-way, basically the blessing of the city council, they would be able to put a mural 13 inches out from the building. The reasoning behind that, or the example, would be the fence up on Capitol Avenue, actually built up to the sidewalk after the foundation was removed. And the sidewalk was not on the property line, but actually exceeded into the city right-of-way. So that was some of the reasoning behind placing that new code change in this recommendation. And then also, there's a couple tweaking some of the grammar and things like that. I believe there may have been a couple other questions, but I'd be glad to answer any questions from the previous meeting or any.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Sanders? Councilman Fitzwater?
Repeat my questions last time and did a good job of explaining it, but there must have been some reason schools and churches were exempt. We can't find any reason.
I did an independent search in Parks and Rec. I believe Amy also did a search, and we could not find any documentation of reasoning that they used in making these decisions 20 years ago.
Similarly for the spacing between murals?
Correct.
Thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Sanders? Okay, at this time, we will open the public hearing portion. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on Bill 2021-75? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing portion and take up Bill 2021-75. Is there any council discussion or deliberation on the bill? Councilman Fitzwater?
I appreciate the comments, and yeah, I'd still have concerns why some provisions were added in. I would like to offer an amendment to add the distance requirement back into the ordinance. I'm not going to do anything on the schools and churches right now, but hope that's the direction we want to go. But my amendment would be to add that language back into the language before.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend. Do you want to, do you have that, Mrs. Donaldson, or do you need to repeat that? So we have a motion to amend. Is there a second? Any further discussion on the amendment? So we will, Councilman Hensley?
Thanks. Just to be clear, that was the only spacing element in this ordinance? Okay, so by removing, okay, so if we were to remove it as it's in this current draft, there would be absolutely no space between murals. Okay,
Yes, sir.
all right, thank you.
Any other questions? So at this time, we will have a vote to accept the amendment. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, so now we will take up 2021-75 as amended. Any deliberation on the bill? Discussion, Councilwoman Ward?
I have a question regarding an existing, the one on Madison. It's many different. Would those be considered individual murals or just one mural? I'm just wondering with the distant requirement.
My interpretation, and go from the start, that's an unpermitted mural. There's 3 entities involved in that. In my opinion, I would view that 3 paintings on building on Madison as one mural, one theme. However, it does not have a permit, and it's within 500 feet of. Did I answer your question?
So explain what this amendment, could you clarify what the amendment would allow? It would allow murals within 500 feet or not within 500 feet?
The bill before you, as written, allow murals within 500 feet of each. But not with Councilman Fitzwater's amendment, though. The way that staff presented it to you from the Planning and Zoning Commission, allow them. Mr. Fitzwater's amendment, go back to the 500-foot.
First, I saw Councilman Spencer and then Councilwoman Wiseman.
Relating to the Madison Street, if I heard you correctly, that is in violation of current city ordinance, correct?
I believe it is, yes.
So what enforcement done to hold them accountable on that?
We are working on that, and I would rather not discuss an ongoing case, if you will. That is something we're addressing internally.
But hopefully that we'll get some kind of satisfaction that they'll be brought into compliance, or it'll be.
We will we will work with the three entities to see what can be done. It is my understanding that they're painted on plywood, so they might be able to be, or certainly they could just be painted over, but we're trying to identify, we got the property owner, we got the sponsor, we got the artist. So there's several entities involved, so it's a little complex, but we do that as a violation.
Where was the breakdown, do you think, of how the got started to now being?
A local foundation and a local association representing that area, commissioned the artwork without a permit.
Councilwoman Weisman and then Councilman Hensley.
My question was merely about enforcement as well, so
Councilman Hensley? Councilman Lester?
So, this, my question is, the murals on Madison, I don't have any problem with how they look, and I don't see that there'd be a problem with having murals like that. So I'm not really thinking it's a good thing to have this requirement of distance, of that degree of distance between murals.
Councilman Hensley?
Sorry, I had a question, then I didn't have it. Now I got it back again. We're just trying to figure out exactly where this non-compliant mural is, and then perhaps also where the compliant mural within 500 feet of it is. Mainly out of curiosity, I think. At this point.
On the north side of the 100 block of Duncan Street is a mural that is behind glass between the liquor store and the flower store. It's well within 500 feet. It's a crow flies.
And then
Of the unpermitted mural.
and the unpermitted mural is on Madison.
Yes, sir.
So around the corner from the permitted.
Well, it's down the corner to the south.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think I know what you're talking about. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilman Spicer?
Honey, is there a timeline on when you get an answer?
I don't have a timeline. I mean, this is not a high priority enforcement action on our side. And I do not believe, looking at the timeline of going back and sort of investigating, I don't believe that there is any sort of collusion in the authors of this document, this bill before you, this happenstance of that mural being, this mural code started being worked on in 2020. I believe the mural that we're talking about that is unpermitted was an honest mistake. Try to work with the property owner or the foundation, or the sponsor to not just go in there and paint it over tomorrow morning if you. There was a lot of investment put into effort. Can be moved safely if that's what the solution is going to be. I don't know at this time. Sorry, I didn't really answer your question.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, the city with their codes and stuff, and, I feel like that, that's something that they're in violation about. If it was somebody that had a sign in their yard, something, promoting their business, that would be a big issue. Seems like this is not a big issue, correct? Or I'm curious. I mean,
This is sort of untested territory. I mean, there's several factors with this case. I mentioned 3 different property owners. It is attached to a building. There's some questions that we have at the staff level that we want to make sure that we'll check with the law department before we take action on it. I said it hasn't been a high priority. It's not going anywhere. No one's losing their life or being electrocuted or anything. So we do prioritize our enforcement activities.
Any other discussion or questions on 2021 as amended? Councilwoman, did you have one, Spicer? Did you say? Okay. Councilwoman Ward?
I just wanted to add that this mural in question is awesome. It's educational to the south side, and it's gotten a lot of positive feedback. And I believe when we're thinking about and considering murals in certain areas of the city, they can be beneficial for an educational component. And I don't see a problem with them being within 500 feet of each other. Both of those murals there on Dunklin and Madison are, I feel, a great asset, again, to the cultural heritage of that area. So I would be against removing that component of the 500 feet. I think, it's beneficial that they could be closer to each other.
Councilman Hensley?
I hazard to even ask this. If they're on plywood from wherever are they outside currently? They're taken inside and leaned up against the windows. They're not murals anymore, right?
The murals on the other building are inside against the windows.
No, I'm talking about the non-compliant.
Well, but the other one is a permitted mirror behind glass. So if you merely put them behind glass, I would posit that they're still murals.
The definition of mural here says a painting, graphic design, or pictorial representation applied directly or attached to an exterior mounting surface or exterior wall that is visible from any point, any public right-of-way, including a public street. It seems like it has to be outside.
That
So-
is one of the questions because the glass is an exterior surface. It's merely transparent.
But
So,
if
I mean-
if it's not applied to the glass or attached to the glass, and it's not outside, we're not changing that definition, so, or not currently changing that definition. Okay, thanks.
Councilman Fitzwater?
2 comments. Don't we already have an ordinance that says you can only cover up so much of window surface in the building?
I believe that is part of the sign ordinance. I'd have to check on that.
So it would violate that provision.
I'm not sure what the percentage of covering the windows is either, but I think the way that the mural in question is covering most of the windows.
My second comment was, this example is why I raised the questions on this mural. These proposals, to me, it does not seem like it's ready for prime time. You've got a lot of questions, and we're not enforcing what we currently have, and now we're going to expand it somewhat broadly to areas that have never had to deal with this. We had the challenge on East High Street, and I admit there weren't many people in the room complaining about it, but I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that hears about it, but people gripe about that mural all the time. I would recommend that we send this back and do a little work on it. Put in policy something that we don't even have all the answers to tonight.
Which committee did this go through, Mr. Sanders?
It started in cultural arts with assistance of a former city planner of ours. And then it went to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So it's gone through two of those bodies.
But none of the 4 standing committees.
Correct.
So it might make sense if council wanted to follow that it would go to one of the 4 committees. I mean, typically things go to planning and zoning and they come directly here. So that is very typical. This is not out of the ordinary whatsoever for it to come straight to council. But I would leave it up to council entirely of what their choice would be. Councilman Spencer?
I echo what Councilman Fitzwater is stating, and also I'd like to add, just to make sure that there's a component of review of how it interacts with other current city codes, i.e. the covering. So it's just a matter of consistency with me and just making sure that we're consistent from one code to the next. So I'd encourage that as well.
Well, we have a motion and second and a bill pending here for 2021-75. So what would the council like to do? Roll call or other action or council or Mr. Molman?
Yeah, I would say that the council has a couple of options here, just from what I'm hearing. A motion to move the bill back to one of the council committees could be appropriate. A motion back to the originating committee with cultural arts could be appropriate. A motion to suspend indefinitely, keep it at the council level. I'm not sure what that would do, but that is an option. So I'd say there's some options there, just depending on where you want to start it.
Councilman Spencer?
I'd like to make a motion that we sit before planning and zoning. It's from there. Back. I mean, not plan, I'm sorry, Public Works. My apologies. Thank you.
Is there a second? To clarify the Public Works and Planning Committee. Okay. We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Fitzwater,
Aye.
Hensley.
Aye.
Kimna,
Aye.
Lester,
Aye.
Schreiber, Spencer,
Aye.
Spicer,
Aye.
Vote,
Aye. Aye.
Ward. Aye. Wiseman.
Aye.
Bill passes. Item 6, we have no appointments this evening. Item 7, no presentations. Item 8, announcements. Our 4 standing committees and other committees are listed at jeffersoncitymod.gov for a full list of meetings and agendas. We'll go through the 4 committees. Administration, anything to report?
Yes, we'll have our next meeting on February 9th at 7:30. I believe it's going to be in the annex again. Maybe. It'll be on the website. How about that?
All right, be sure to check before you go. Finance Committee.
Thank you. Our next meeting will be this coming Thursday, the 20th at 7:30 a.m., I believe across the hall.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See, Councilman Schreiber is not here for public safety. Captain Wilde, do you happen to know if we have any upcoming meeting?
I believe the next one is on the 27th of January.
Okay, thank you. Public Works and Planning.
Yes, we had a great meeting on the 13th of January. Our next meeting is February the 10th at 7:30.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements by council members or city staff? Okay. Item 9, we don't have our Lincoln University student representative here this evening. Item 10, presentations from the gallery. We have nobody signed up. And is there anyone online that would like to present on our item 10? Seeing none, we will go to item 11. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 12, bills introduced, 2021-76.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending the 2020-20 budget of the City of Jefferson, Missouri by appropriating additional funds within the General Fund, Parks Fund, Airport Fund, Parking Fund, Transit Fund, Wastewater Fund, and within the Workers' Compensation Fund.
Ms. Miller?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a supplemental request for the Workers' Compensation Fund. We've completed our FY21 year with claims for that period and any provisions for unsettled claims. And so that's why we require 200,000 extra from to fund this Workers' Compensation Fund.
Thank you. Any questions of council? Councilman Hensley?
Thank you. I move that we suspend the rules in order to third read and vote on this item tonight.
Okay, we've had a request to suspend the rules. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we will take up 2021-76.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending the 2020 budget of the City of Jefferson, Missouri by appropriating additional funds within the General Fund, Parks Fund, Airport Fund, Parking Fund, Transit Fund, Wastewater Fund, and within the Workers' Compensation Fund.
Any discussion or deliberation or questions? Roll call, please.
Hensley,
Aye.
Kimna,
Aye.
Lester,
Aye.
Schreiber, Spencer,
Aye.
Spicer,
Aye.
Vote, Ward,
Aye.
Wiseman.
Aye.
Bill passes.
Aye.
Oh, did we
Oh,
miss?
sorry, Fitzwater.
We're good. All right, thank you. 2021-77.
Ordinance authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an amendment to the supplement agreement between the city of Jefferson and the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission, extending the project time for the Airfield lighting repairs project.
Mr. Marash?
Thank you. I think the clerk indicated it pretty well, but basically, the Airfield lighting project was waiting on some materials, so it extended the actual project, extended past the original grant agreement timeframe, so this one would update that and allow us to get our final reimbursement.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? 2021-78.
An ordinance of the city of Jefferson, Missouri authorizing a supplemental appropriation to the Jefferson City Police Department, amending the 2021-2022 annual budget and authorizing the expenditure of such funds.
Captain Wilde?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Jeff City Police Department is requesting a supplemental appropriation from our Department of Justice Drug Forfeiture Funds in the amount of $26,397. That would go towards the purchase of 5 ballistic shields and 1 drone that offers us two-way communications capabilities in dealing with people on the streets. The shields themselves are beyond the manufacturer's shelf life. They're not rifle rated at this point, and they've really expired over time. So we'd like to add that back to our protective posture. And the drone itself, like I mentioned earlier, it does give us an enhanced capability of two-way communication. So if we were have to talk with someone over a distance or in a secluded area, we could utilize that drone to establish communications and either walk people out of a dangerous situation or walk us into it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy.
Councilman Spencer?
Do you have a timeline of when this is, or how long it take to get your shields and the drone?
The shields themselves, we could have those in a couple months. The drone specifically, we would have to send somebody to the training on the specific drone. So we're looking probably 4 months or so.
Is there a need for suspending the rules tonight to, it's on there?
That's at the leisure of the council. As soon as the appropriation is made, we'll make a purchase.
And we suspend the rules on this to proceed tonight.
Okay, we've had a request to suspend the rules. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we will take up 2021-78.
An ordinance of the city of Jefferson, Missouri authorizing a supplemental appropriation to the Jefferson City Police Department, amending the 2021-2022 annual budget and authorizing the expenditure of such funds.
Any further deliberation or questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Kimna,
Aye.
Lester,
Aye.
Schreiber, Spencer,
Aye.
Spicer,
Aye.
Vote.
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wiseman,
Aye.
Fitzwater,
Aye.
Hensley.
Aye.
Bill passes. 2021-79.
An ordinance of the city of Jefferson, Missouri, finding that the area described as the Project 10-Pin redevelopment area is a blighted area as defined in Chapter 353 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri, as amended, and that the redevelopment of such area is necessary and in the public interest, approving a development plan for such area, approving a grant of real property tax abatement, approving a development agreement, and providing further authority.
Mr. Molman?
Thank you. This ordinance approves a development plan, a development agreement, and the grant of partial tax abatement for development project at 2017 Christie Drive. This project is internally known as Project 10-Pin, but consists of a bowling alley plus entertainment retail dining establishment. The development agreement specifically commits the developer to hiring and maintaining 30 full-time equivalent jobs within the redevelopment area. The redevelopment area is the area that housed the former Capitol Bowl facility, which was damaged by the tornado in May of 2019. Redevelopment plan includes a finding that the area is classified as a blighted area under Chapter 353 and includes an approval of such designation by the City Council. The partial tax abatement that would be approved under this ordinance consists of abatement of 75% of the real property taxes on improvements for the first 10 years of the property tax, and then 50% of all real estate taxes for the next ensuing 15-year period. So what that means is essentially that for the first 10 years, the property would pay 25% the taxes on improvements, and 100% on the taxes on the land, and then it would pay 50% of the taxes. And after the 25-year period, the property would go 100% back on the tax rolls. The conclusions in tonight's bill are quite numerous, but I have to go over any of these. Representatives from the developer couldn't make it tonight, but they've assured me that they will be present at the 7th meeting. Is there any questions? There will also be a public hearing, February 7th meeting, and spring. At the February 7th meeting, and the required notices have been sent out to the various taxing districts that would be affected by the green tax abatement. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Molman. Any questions? Councilman Spencer?
I think when I read through the agreement, if the developers and property owners, business owners sell within first 25 years, that agreement is transferable to new ownership?
Yes. So the agreement runs with the land. So someone would have to buy it and be subject, they would know that they would be subject to the requirements of this agreement.
Any other questions or comments? Councilman Lester?
Yeah, I just had some concerns about this proposal, and should maybe a finance meeting. Just want to understand better whether these abatement proposals really consistent with the development that we see.
So we've had a request to add
Sure,
it to
yeah,
the agenda.
and Councilman Lester shared his interest in this discussion with me late this afternoon. I've asked staff to amend the agenda for Thursday morning to add an item on this topic. So hopefully they'll be able to release a new amended agenda prior to 7:30 tomorrow morning. Otherwise,
Does that meet the requirements, Mr. Molman? Or, I'm sorry, Mr. Kroll, did you have something to add? Or wait, tomorrow's Wednesday.
Yeah, tomorrow's Wednesday, so it's 24 hours notice. So if we get it before 7:30 tomorrow, then we'll fly with the sunshine.
I was,
It's been posted. Any new topics that come before the 24 hours should be included. So this is a very simple exercise. It can literally just be someone going and writing the topic on the posted agenda in front of the clerk's office. So if you're going to talk, if you know that you're going to talk about it, it should be posted.
Mr. Kroll?
I was just going to ask, is there any merit to putting it on for the February meeting so we had time to share whatever information there may be for that? I'm not sure what all that would be. Is there an urgency in doing it at the next meeting? I'm not sure who answers that question. Councilmember Lester, perhaps?
Well, yeah, I would. I was just thinking it'd be better to discuss it before the next meeting when we have to discuss it.
Before we act on this item, on the item.
This council will take this up on February 7th.
Correct. There's a public hearing in final consideration February 7th.
Well, it sounds like Ms. Donaldson could write it on here tonight, so we should be good to bring it up as requested at the Finance Committee meeting Thursday.
yeah, and I do recognize that it's incredibly short notice and that even some of the people who we would ideally like to have in the room may not even be available at 7:30 a.m. on Thursday. And it is a pretty short window for staff to, put together meaningful information. But to the extent that we can have the discussion on Thursday, I guess we will.
Thank you. Any further discussion on 79? Okay, bills pending. We've taken up number 75. Nothing on the informal. Item 15, resolutions 2021-23.
A resolution authorizing the city to execute an agreement with Bowman Realty Estate Broker Services.
Mr. Molman,
Thank you. This resolution would award a contract for real estate broker services on an as-needed basis for the city. Specifically, there was a substitute that the city council directed staff to prepare, which authorizes the granting of the real estate broker services contract to the Beth McGeorge team. In order to effectuate that, there will need to be a vote on the substitute to adopt the substitute, and then another vote to approve the resolution as substituted. So 2 votes.
so first, is there a motion to approve 2021-23?
Move to accept the substitute.
Is there a second? And then, so we've had a motion to approve the substitute. So, Mrs. Donaldson, did we have you read it yet? I don't think so.
I haven't read the substitute is a resolution authorizing the city to execute an agreement with Beth McGeorge for real estate broker services.
So I think the motion was to take up the original, correct, Mr. Molman?
It's really,
To take the substitute from here?
yeah, it's really a procedure without a difference.
Then
Yeah,
we're good.
Ms. Wiseman's motion to accept or to approve the substitute works.
Okay, thank you. And we just read the substitute, so we have the bill as substituted that we're going to take up now. So then we'll be ready here for the vote. But we're going to take up 21-23 as substituted. Any discussion? Questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Lester,
Aye.
Schreiber, Spencer,
No.
Spicer,
No.
Vogt,
Aye, or I'm abstaining, sorry.
Ward. Aye. Wiseman,
Aye.
Fitzwater,
Aye.
Hensley,
Aye.
Himna.
Aye.
6 ayes, resolution is substituted passes.
Thank you. 2021-24.
A resolution authorizing the city to implement a personnel recruitment incentive system for the Jefferson City Police Department.
Captain Wilde?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Like many other agencies across the nation right now, we're really having a challenging time getting recruits and applicants to the police department and telecommunications operator positions. So we've been doing a lot of research, trying to come up with plans and incentives to get people to the door, hopefully with the end result of employing them as a police officer or 911 communicator. A lot of agencies around the country are offering incentive bonuses for hiring on, and we would request permission to be able to do the same here in Jefferson City. For each vacancy we have at the police department, each month, there's about $5,300 worth of unexpended funds from our personnel line item. And for each telecommunications operator, it's about $4,487. So what we're proposing is to reinvest that money into a hiring incentive that would hopefully draw more people again to our department so that we can employ them as officers here. As far as that plan, we're looking at 2 tiers for police officer. The first tier would be a $10,000 hiring incentive for post-approved. That is a police officer licensed applicant that has already got a Missouri license that would come in, simply go through the field training program and go to work. And that would be a $10,000 bonus. When we looked at the savings from the personnel line item, as well as the savings from the $5,000 that we would have to spend to send them to the academy, we felt $10,000 would be a good investment to get trained police officers on the force and on the street sooner than later. For non-post approved officers, it would be a $5,000 incentive, get them to the door, and then we would pay the $5,000 to send them to the police academy and get them trained. Very similar for communications operator, we are requesting a $5,000 hiring incentive for communications operators that have previous experience, and $2,500 for those that have no experience whatsoever that we would have to train. In an effort to also increase our recruiting posture, we're requesting that we also add a referral bonus or referral incentive to current employees of the police department that refer communications operators or police officers to our agency in the sum of $500. So if they make a referral and we hire that person and they make it out of training, we would reward that officer or that communications operator with a $500 stipend for bringing them to the table. We did run this to the Public Safety Committee on December 30th, and it was passed unanimously to the City Council. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilman Spencer?
When was the last batch of hirings for our police officers?
We just had one approved in the last week or so. We did hire back a former police officer that came back to us. Right now, our current vacancies are, we're looking at about 20% vacancy in both police officer and communications operator. We've got 10 vacancies on the police side with 6 in their field training, 2 are at the police academy. We're down 4 telecommunications operators, so that translates to 20% of each of those. With the amount of training that goes into getting those individuals hired, or the time that it takes to get somebody hired, trained, and on the street by themselves is around 15 months or so. So those 10 positions that we're advertising right now, we can expect that they won't be trained and ready to go for about another 15 months or so. So we're really, the effort is to try to get post-approved licensed officers that know that Jeff City, because I will tell you from my heart, Jeff City is the place you want to work if you're a police officer. It's a very supportive community. We've got a lot going for us here. We want to try to draw those people in from other cities, outstate, in-state, have them take that test and have trained officers here on the street ready to go.
I was just wondering, as far as having it retroactive for some of the most recent officers.
Well, what we wanted to give plenty of time to implement this. So what we're proposing is this would run right now for a 1-year period starting March 1st and run February of next year. We visit it every year if the need should so arise. But we felt like we really needed to make a cutoff point where the council decided to approve this, back it, and that would be the point going forward.
And I can add a more practical point to that. We cannot apply this retroactively. That would likely be classified as a bonus, which are not allowed under the Missouri Constitution for public employees. So this is something that really be applied prospectively.
Unless it's possibly reclassified for a different title or call it something else like the premium pay, that's something.
It's so once again, with the premium pay, you'd have to do it prospectively, not retrospectively. There's some pretty heavy analysis there, but that's a good way to think about it, is that pay incentives like this can only be done prospectively.
Councilman Lester and then Fitzwater?
So I recognize the need for this and are supportive, but is there some type of payback clause if a person doesn't work out or leaves within a certain number of years related to this?
I think that's something else that would probably be best addressed by the city attorney. We've talked about that, but our goal was to get splash up front with what we could get, and I don't know, bind them to a payback if.
Right. So the issue there, if there is a clawback, then for something that doesn't work out, then the federal government under the FSLA rules would classify it as a discretionary bonus. And discretionary bonuses have to be added to an officer's base pay for the purposes of figuring out what their overtime rate would be. So essentially what you would have is someone making their base rate plus another $10,000 in figuring out what their overtime rate is. So they would be paid an inflated overtime rate if we had a clawback provision. So that is a question that was specifically asked and answered, and essentially under FSL rules, you have to do it without a clawback, or otherwise you could be subject to sue for sufficient overtime. The city of Kansas City ran into this exact problem no more than last year.
Councilman Fitzwater?
Yes, thank you. And preface by saying I 100% support this. I had the opportunity to go to the public safety meeting and enjoyed the discussion. My question is, and I see on the document that it's approved by staff, so I assume Mr. Kroll approved the process. My question is, do we anticipate this philosophy being used or else city staff, I mean, the same type of mechanism? Again, I support getting dollars as quickly as we can. We've had that debate over the last 6 months. I'm just trying to look ahead. Are there other areas where this may come back to us?
I think it's an option. I'm not planning on doing it right now, but I think as circumstances may warrant, it's certainly one option that we would consider as well as others.
Thank you. Any further questions, or is there a motion to approve 24?
So I'm terribly sorry. So just to point out something that could be a decision point for the city council. So the summary and then the attached Exhibit A to the resolutions identify a program date of March 1st through February 28th. After the resolution summary was prepared, and certainly after the Exhibit A was prepared, there was some discussion as to whether or not that time frame needed to move up to, to meet recruiting purposes. Falling off. And so I drafted the resolution to authorize the city administrator to promulgate the initial program effective dates. So under this resolution, the city administrator could move up or move back that initial program date. So if there's a hard date that the city council would want to approve, on its own initiative, then I would say an amendment of some sort is appropriate. Otherwise, kind of default as it is, those initial program dates are going to be up to the city administrator. So that is something that is a little bit different than what you're seeing in the resolution that I drafted in the previously drafted resolution summary. So hope I didn't confuse anyone there. So.
As he sees necessary.
So we have a motion. Is that a second? Okay. Any further discussion on resolution 2124? Roll call, please.
Schreiber, Spencer,
Aye.
Spicer,
Aye.
Vote,
Aye.
Ward. Aye. Wiseman.
Aye.
Fitzwater,
Aye.
Hensley.
Aye.
Kimna.
Aye.
Lester.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2021-25.
A resolution approving a memorandum agreement between the Midland Regional Planning Commission, Cole County, and the city of Jefferson.
Mr. Molman.
Thank you. This resolution would approve a memorandum agreement between Cole County, Missouri Regional Planning Commission and the city, which regards an CDBG CV, which stands for COVID, grant for an EMS substation. So essentially this agreement is a prerequisite to Cole County or to the city applying on behalf of Cole County for funding through the CDBG CV program in order to construct an EMS substation at the corner of McCarty and Adams. This is an agreement that is required by the federal government, Missouri DED, in order for the city to move ahead with that application. This is a little bit of a unique situation because Cole County was not eligible to apply for this grant on its own. The state directed that the city could apply on Cole County's behalf. So the posture of this grant is city as the grantee, the person asking for the grant, and Cole County as sub-grantee. So in that type of situation, they're requiring this memorandum of agreement to document the relationship between the city and Cole County. So essentially, in this agreement, the city would administer the grant, which really is the main thrust of the activity, is reviewing pay applications paid by the county for compliance with the grant requirements, submitting those requirements to Missouri Department of Development. Once they approve those pay applications, reimbursement requests, then the state would then grant money back to the city, and then we distribute that money back to the Cole County. Like I said, a little complicated, but this is a unique situation. This program. The Mid-Missouri Regional Planning Commission is involved in this agreement. They will be assisting the city and Cole County with some of the required grant activities. That's why they're included within the agreement. But ultimately, what we're looking to do is get a new public facility built right here in the downtown core to serve services. So fiscal information, it's a $2 million grant. The project as formulated by the county is a bit more than the $2 million, so the county will be responsible for any above what is provided by the grant. There is anticipated the availability of about $90,000 in potential administrative costs that could be captured. It is agreement sets forth an arrangement where both the Minmo RPC and the city can submit time actually spent on administering the grant up to $45,000. So neither entity, the city or the RPC, would be entitled to recover more than half of the available administrative funds. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. Also, here is Ms. Senzi, who will be doing the real heavy lifting on this grant administration. So assume that she would be available to answer any of the more grant technical questions. So,
Any questions for Mr. Molman or Ms. Sensi? Councilman Spencer?
So this agreement mirrors what the county's already, their document that they passed.
yes, this document is the same as what was approved by the county this morning.
We do have with us County Commissioner Harry Otto, along with our Director Chief Hoy, Eric Hoy from Cole County EMS. So we'll have them come to the podium too. Before we do, any last questions for for Mr. Molman or Ms. Senzi? We'd like to welcome Commissioner Otto and Director Chief Hoy to the podium. Welcome.
Good evening, Council. Just to give you a brief update on where this project. So, in my short tenure here, analyzing kind of strategic plan for Cole County EMS, station positioning and call volumes and map obviously is at the forefront of what we do. Service as timely as possible. Approximately a decade ago, in order to city of Jefferson, an ambulance in the center. Currently, that was originally done as a temporary method. So the ambulance now currently sits within the locked sally port of the has their quarters within the center itself. which does present a lot of unique operational challenges. Anytime there's prisoner movement, is not allowed to access the Sally Port, which can sometimes cause delays in response times. There's other issues with deliveries and operations of the jail. To leave their station for those things are occurring. The other issue at hand is for 2,900 calls for service in the Station 2 box. The next busiest station was 1,900. So pretty much, some called difference. What those numbers tell me is that we have the opportunity to place another ambulance in the downtown. However, due to the space limitations and operations of the jail, we just can't do it. As a testament to our crews, they are able to handle and service 3,000 calls a year. But there is going to come a point where another ambulance in the downtown. This project allows us to do that. Allows us to enhance service not only to the heart of Jefferson City, but also the critical infrastructure that lies in downtown. One thing that, it is one thing to talk about the wear and tear and the pace on the crews, but when you think about 1,000 calls more for service than anywhere else in the run box, that means that crew is committed 1,000 more times. So oftentimes ambulances are responding from outside the downtown. Giving us a second ambulance down here, response times and such. So definitely a much needed project. Pursuing the CDBG funding will allow us to look at some other long-term infrastructure needs, such as joint, some of the other things that we've identified. So just allowing this grant money I'd like to thank everybody for putting in the work. It's a technical process. Anytime two governmental agencies are involved, everybody's put in a ton of work into it. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief Hoy. Are there any questions? Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Otto, for being here as well.
So just to add to what I said, we this morning procedures involved. This is just the next step. So, staff, see next step and for it. Time is of the essence. There's other people saying.
Thank you, Commissioner Otto. Are there any questions? Thank you. Is there a motion to approve 2021-25?
Aye.
We have a motion and second. Is there any further discussion on the resolution? Roll call, please.
Spencer,
Aye.
Spicer,
Aye.
Vogt,
Aye.
Ward. Aye. Wiseman.
Aye.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Hensley.
Aye.
Kimna.
Aye.
Lester.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Resolution passes. Item 16, presentations from the gallery on other topics. We have nobody signed up this evening. Is there anyone online under item 16? Seeing none, we have item 17. Is there any council and staff discussion of presentation topics? Item 18, new business. We have item A, 101 Jackson Street Transformational Housing. Mr. Molman.
Thank you. So as Ms. Wessler indicated at the pre-meeting, the Housing Authority Board did approve a bid proposal to redevelop 101 Jackson Street. This matter previously came to the City Council with a request for city financial participation in the project in the form of about $10,000 for roof remediation activities. However, Transformational Housing amended their bid proposal to the Housing Authority and removed that request uh, for the city to financially participate. So before the city council tonight, mostly it's informational. However, under the LCRA, the Land Clearance Redevelopment Act, Redevelopment Authority statutes, there is a 30-day objection period for these types of redevelopment proposals that the city council can enter its objections to the transfer and the redevelopment. No action is necessary. Essentially, if no objection is made within that 30-day period, then the project is essentially deemed approved, and the project is able to move forward. However, the city council does have the ability to waive objection period if it so desires, and that would allow us to proceed. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. Of course, Ms. Wessler's here, and I believe there's a representative from Transformational Housing here as well. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk with you specifics as well. So open it up.
Thank you, Mr. Malman. Are there any questions of council? Councilman Fitzwater?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, and I appreciate them opening the meeting up. I mean, I guess that's standard procedure, but I did have a chance. The proposal that was submitted, approved this morning, had a few changes to what we saw. In the original request, I think had a request for a lot close to the 101 East Jackson. I think now the request is for 2 lots, if I'm not mistaken. And then there was also some provisions put in to put some time restrictions on the group as far as getting the roof rehabbed. It wasn't real clear what the time frame was. It seemed like they were open to allowing it to be a reasonable time frame, but I think there was some number put in there. Some at least target date and some dollar amounts. My concern is, well, I've got concerns with 101 East Jackson. I think there's some differences of opinion, the ability to salvage that building. Hats off to anybody that thinks they can. Councilman Schreiber and I had an opportunity to walk through with Mr. Sanders. Mr. Molman was there. That building is in sad shape. So, I mean, it's going to be a huge undertaking, but I am concerned about the 2 lots that were requested to go with it. I mean, to me, that seems like an unusual request. We have been working, and the mayor has been leading effort to totally transform the prison project, and we're looking at investing $100+ million in that project, which makes this piece of real estate potentially very valuable to the long-term goals of the city, as far as, you know, what we would like to see between our Capitol complex, what we hope is going to be a game-changing project at the prison, and a lot of opportunities between it. So to include, you know, again, if a group wants to take a risk on a piece of property to develop it, you know, that's one issue. But tagging 2 additional lots with it, and then just to concern the open-end timeframe, I think, you know, I think the request to put the roof on and try to put some parameters around when construction would start there is a step in the right direction. But my concern is, one, if it doesn't fit long-term in what we're trying to do with the real estate between the churches and I'm not sure the cross street and Lafayette, where the prison project will start, and also the additional lots and just the ability to rehab that building. So I'm not sure what has come back to us is the same as what it was last time. Still not sure what we're being asked to do, but I do have concerns Not about the group. I did go down and look at their Cherry Street. They were very kind to take me through that facility. It's an amazing facility. They've done a great job. I know what they said they invested in it. If you equate that to 101 East Jackson, 544,000 seems ambitious, but I mean, that's their decision. But it seems like we ought to have some input into timeframes, which again, they put beginnings of some this morning at their meeting, and the additional property that's being requested to go along with 101 East Jackson. Those are my comments.
Any other comments? I know we have Ms. Wessler. We'll have her come to the podium and address a couple of those questions as well. Councilman Spencer?
So I guess this is for staff question, just to make sure I understand completely. If 101 Jackson Street is deemed not salvageable, I don't know if the Transformational Housing Group has had their own structural assessment done to that property or not. But if something going in and tearing plaster and exposing the true bones of the structure, it's not deemed salvageable, how does that money from the CDBG grant, is it transferable to that organization for another project? Or does it just stay in the city's, turn to the city's?
It really is circumstantial based on what happens. So it's pretty normal for grant projects. It's almost, you have to have a crystal ball. You're planning your project from beginning to end, knowing that in construction, things come up, things happen. So there's the possibility of amending the scope of your project to be able to alleviate. You transition the project from being completed as you wrote in your original grant application to transitioning to try to just making it work. And sometimes that's a phased application approach. It's also important to remember that nobody is getting a check for $544,000. It's all reimbursable. So if transformational housing were not to submit an eligible request, we would not allow that reimbursement. They would have to, quote unquote, eat it. They'd have to take that hit. If it completely just goes south and they decide that they need to demo, that's also an option. That is an eligible activity under CDBG, under this granting act, so they could amend to do that activity. At the end of the day, if the question is there any way that the city could be responsible or culpable for those funds? Not if the only way that we are culpable is if we reimburse an ineligible expense. So if their project falls through, they can say, we're not doing this, we're not proceeding any further, and they withdraw their project. So there's different options and different routes based off of what could happen during this project.
Second question is probably for you, Mr. Molman. With the additional lots that have been proposed to grant to this project, is there any other industry that would potentially might want to have access to those properties, where at least that goes onto their tax roll and gives them an opportunity to increase their property for future expansion for them as well?
Right. I mean, potentially, I do believe that at least one of the lots on State Street has been for offer from the Housing Authority since it was acquired in 1998. I was thinking about the other one that was acquired as part of the
We'll have Ms. Wessler address that because you did mention that. You went over that this morning too at the meeting. So yeah, thank you.
And when we purchased that property in 19, we had it out on the market, pretty much open since that time. And we purchased the one right behind 514. The one right behind 101. We purchased that one in 2019, and it has been on the market since 2019.
I guess my question or directly would be, so if we're going to just basically give the property away, a profit, why wouldn't we make the same offer to industry that's already there potentially, or have we? I'm
The issue why we went ahead and had them application to include that lot is because to get the right of way for him to be able to. I don't think we have that much time to wait to let him get that. Thinking have a really heavy snow and we'll probably lose the project. If we can get him in there as soon as possible so that he can make those roof repairs, we can, I think we can.
And with the gentleman that's with Transformational Housing, if I can ask a question of you. Thank you for being here tonight. When I asked about if done a structural assessment, you was shaking your head that you all have.
We have two licensed contractors that are volunteers with Kyle Kittrell, who's ramrodded our 203 Cherry Street, and Jude Markway, who's been working with us, and will have the lead on Jackson. Both of them have walked through the building. Now, we have not had a structural engineer look at it, but, you know, the damage on 203 Cherry, been a fire there, placing 33 or 34 floor joists, either structural fire damage, termite damage. So we're prepared to handle that as long as the brick, the limestone foundation are solid, and it looks to us like they are. Our estimates and things should hold.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Hensley?
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get straight on exactly what property we're talking about. Transferring only because my understanding from the last time this was discussed, and maybe this was even a faulty understanding. Of course, the structure, the lot that the structure's on, and then there is a lot behind the 101 Jackson property that, and this other lot runs along State Street, and it's immediately behind 101. And I thought I understood that was going with it, essentially. But then, is there an additional lot that's been added?
Yes,
And where does that run?
okay, here's what the situation was. Time we placed our initial offer, insisted that 504 East State Street needed to be part of what we acquired. Reason for that is 5 families in kids, and we didn't want to playing on Jackson Street. We needed a place. First of all, we needed a place for off-street parking, place for kids to play. Just don't have that. As close as these old homes were built to the streets, both to Jackson and State Street, there's just not much room. So the 504 was going to give us room for, you know, kids to play and to park. Now, the
I'm sorry.
second property, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And is 504 the one immediately behind
Correct.
the structure? Okay.
Correct.
I get that then.
And it's roughly the same shape. It's a close to a square. Now, the next one, it's over by the old warehouse,
Mhm.
is fairly narrow, but it's deep.
Yeah, and that's
and-
514 maybe?
Correct.
Okay.
And at the time we made the initial offer, we didn't realize that the property didn't have sewer service. Because the sewer line, this property tied into another house, and code doesn't allow that. So we were then gonna have to either dig up Jackson Street to get to the sewer across the street, which didn't seem like a real feasible idea, or we were gonna have to get an easement, which is just on the other side of that 514. Now, we've talked to the owners of the
The warehouse.
warehouse, And they've agreed to give us an easement tie into the sewer line, which is about, I'm guessing, 15 feet, say, onto their property. But we still would have needed to access across that 514. Time we placed our initial order, offer, we were unaware of that. We'd presumed that, every place had sewer lines.
Okay, so this 514 was not included the last time we talked about it here,
Correct.
but it was sort of tacked on
It was
today?
Well, no, it
Or-
was added on when we withdrew the request for $10,000 for roof repair.
Uh-huh.
We put that in on the same request.
Okay. Okay. But then the housing authority considered this all again? Okay, and then, so it was included in what the housing authority most recently considered. Is that right?
Yes, that was approved this morning to include both lots.
Yes.
Well, all three lots, 101.
Okay,
504.
all right, thank you. I'm sorry if any of that was remedial for everyone else in the room, but I appreciate you walking.
The board did approve it.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Fitzwater?
Just a follow-up question to that. If warehouse can give an easement, housing authority owns those two lots now. You're not giving the easement across them to get to the sewer?
Do you want to speak in the mic? Thank you.
Yes, but our concern is that the time it will take for us to get the easement approved so that he will start working on the house will take basically what the attorneys were saying was 3 to 4 months to get that easement. And we do not feel as the board that we have 3 to 4 months to wait for this repairs to be done to this roof.
Won't the other easement take the same amount of time?
If his agreement that he's making with that landlord, if he's willing to buy our part, our sale would be done, and that would be something he'd have to work on with him. But that would
But he
not,
still wouldn't be able to do the sewer until he gets easements across all of it.
yeah, but he can do the roof.
Sewer and the roof are different issues. Okay, we're not going to take the property if we don't feel confident that we can get a sewer. We will take the property. We do know we have to repair the roof immediately.
They give you an easement to go across there, doesn't that take care of it?
That would take, well, that would take care of a significant portion problem. Bear in mind that we've got to have the one property. Our offer is not good without well, the initial one wasn't, this one wouldn't either without 504. That's the absolute minimum we have to have, even if we had sewer right there. Understand what I'm saying about 504? That's,
I understand that. I'm just
That-
trying to look at it from the city's perspective. Is that a deal that we normally?
I don't know. I can't answer that question.
I would like to say that this is not your property. This one's ours. 514 is ours. It's not yours.
I understand that.
It's not one of the Rita properties.
504 is though.
Yes. But he's got to have 504 for off-street parking.
Where did-
He can't put 5 families in there with 1 parking space on them.
Where did when that was a functioning building, where did people that lived in it park?
Can't answer that.
Councilman Hensley?
Thanks. I mean, personally, the 504, or what I've tonight learned is the 504 property. to now it was this rectangle behind the house. That was baked in for me. That's not issue. I understood that from our first meeting. On this additional property being tacked on. I mean, does anyone have a sense of why the housing authority would possibly say no? And if you come to an agreement, I guess I'm wondering what it would take for the potential buyer to feel comfortable moving forward. If you have an agreement from the housing authority, even if it for some reason would take 4 months to work up an easement across a 40-foot wide parcel. I guess I'm wondering why, if the approval of the housing authority board would be sufficient, even if it takes a while to paper the thing up. So why transferring the entire? Anyway, I'm having trouble understanding the necessity of this transaction.
The housing authority is put in over, I'm trying to think of what the number was. It was either $28,000 or $38,000 into 514 since we took it in 1998. We are not going to get that back. Is kind of the gist of what they're saying. I know the discussion that between the attorney and the board was that right now to get the easement drawn up, it could be 3 to 4 months. I don't know why it's that long. Discussion that they had about how long it's taking to even get an appointment with the title companies. But whatever for easements, I'm not exactly sure how that whole conversation came about, but the concern was having to wait that long on having to do an easement where the sale of the property would allow us to move forward immediately. And that's where the board was coming. And looking at the fact of how much money they've already put into the property, upkeeping it since 1998.
Can I ask a silly question?
Or 80 something.
Can I ask you a silly question? Because I'm not super familiar with housing authority protocols. Who closes sales for the housing authority? Are those closed through a title company?
I have no idea. Sorry,
Does anyone in the room know if for some reason they close their own deals or do it privately, or if a title company closes transactions for the housing authority?
I assume it had to go through the title company because it would have to be brought up to date.
And can I
Generally,
say something?
generally, you only need to go.
I mean, an attorney can do it. You
Yes,
don't need a
Mr.
title company. It's
Councilman
just-
Vogt?
I'm sorry. There's a delay, a terrible delay. An attorney, the title work and change the legal description is all it would need to be at the county courthouse. You don't need a title company to do it. A real company to do it. They perform closings all the time. I don't know. It would take 3 to 4 months to have a legal description changed, but I don't do that every day. But I just don't know why it would take that long.
Councilwoman Wiseman?
Would that be because of the survey maybe? Because I think it does take that long to get surveys done. I've recently had a couple done and it's taken quite a bit of time.
That's my best guess, is that the holdups in the survey, not the attorneys.
Let's consider the source on that one.
process yet. I'm new, as you know, and I'm not involved in any of going by what the attorney told me and trying to be sure I'm Right, and he's at another board meeting tonight, so he said if I got stuck, text him, so.
Great, thank you.
Any other discussion on this item?
I just,
Councilman Lester?
I just say I think that property has been vacant and dilapidated all the time. I've lived here 20 years. And I think those lots behind it have been empty. I just see this as an opportunity to put this to productive use, meet a need that the city has. I'm all for going forward with it. Everybody recognizes that it needs the roof right away, and anything we can do to accelerate that needs to be done. This can be.
Thank you, Councilman Hensley.
Thanks. I'm just curious. Is there thought about what might be done with the additional parcel with 514 beyond laying a sewer through it?
Well, from our perspective, habitat might be an option. Might build something else, or we offer it up to another developer. We've got the sewer, now would be sewer cross, so it's not right under where somebody would build. That would be our plan, is to run it in. Leaves the property open. It's in the cards.
Great, thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilman Spencer?
You know, I had a little heartburn on it from with this week because, you know, we didn't have any information on the CDBG grant. My understanding that was decided from December 15th and December 23rd. So it would have been nice to have had some of that information first presented this project. So I don't know if there was a snafu in communication. It would have been nice to have had that information when we first started talking about the project.
Any other questions, comments? I really appreciate the Housing Authority and their work on this. I know that we've talked a lot about housing and the need for it, especially after the tornado, but even before. And looking at your work that was cited, of course, on Cherry, what you've been able to do there has been great. Councilman Fitzwater?
Yeah, just one final comment. Yeah, I'm not sure what we're being asked to do at this point, but I understand land has been empty for a long time, but again, we've got potential of a game-changing opportunity. I think the proposal to try to create some housing probably fits that area. I'm still just concerned about giving away land in addition to the building. I just don't think we know what we want to do there. And to say the land has been sitting there for a long time, it absolutely has. There's a prison down the street from it. But that's not the case anymore. I'm opposed to that piece of it. The project itself, I mean, for another group to decide if they can raise the funds. If the CDBG money doesn't come through and they can proceed with the project. The land's a different perspective. Thanks.
And I'm glad to also see that this piece of phase one, I know we've been working very hard on Capitol Avenue and looking at phase one, seeing this come to fruition is a very exciting time. So I hope that council would pass this tonight. With that, is there a motion to, I guess what we're approving is not a bill, would it be the contract, Mr. Molman?
So there's essentially three options. The city council could do nothing. If they do nothing, the 30-day objection period would run. And at that point, the developer would be free to proceed with redevelopment activities. The city council could object to the proposal, or it could vote to waive the 30-day objection period, and that would allow the redeveloper to begin work upon closing.
So I would say that there are three options. City Council tonight.
Councilman Lester?
So as I said before, I think it's really important to get the roof work going as soon as possible. So I would move to waive the objection period for the project.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Spicer,
No.
Vote, Ward,
Aye.
Okay.
Wiseman,
Aye.
Fitzwater,
No.
Hensley,
Aye.
Kimna,
Aye.
Lester,
Aye.
Schreiber, Spencer,
No.
and Councilman Vote. I didn't hear your vote on that.
I voted aye.
Thank you. 6 ayes.
The motion passes. Thank you. Item 19, is there a motion from council to go into closed session this evening?
Other items that could be classified for new business, if we could.
Okay, so first on the closed session, any desire there? Okay, no. Sorry, back to new business. Any other new business? Any other new business? Councilman Spencer?
So I just have some questions about waiver issue that we've been confronted with. I guess my main questions is what authority does the Bicentennial Bridge Committee have to direct city staff to remove pavers?
I made that decision because those particular pavers referenced a previous council action, which was to remove the UDC marker from city right-of-way, and those pavers referenced previous council decision, which was to remove that.
But what authority does the committee have to have direct city staff to do that?
As the chair of the committee, I spoke with staff and asked that they be removed after I spoke with the donor.
Did the rest of the committee have any voice or input on that decision?
We hadn't met since then. In fact, we still haven't met since then.
Was there been a vote of the committee to change the policy?
We haven't met since then, but since then I did request that the sheet that for pavers, if any further pavers are to be sold, would be clarified a bit. That says the Bicentennial Bridge Committee from now on will review the pavers.
Because the application is still in circulation to the public. So are those applications?
I've made a request to make some changes, so those changes will be made, but no worries, we haven't purchased any further other than the current ones that have already been ordered. So since that time, no further ones have been ordered.
But there are current pavers that don't meet the criteria that you've established.
Not necessarily. I mean, when you say criteria, the intent of the pavers was to recognize donors and supporters. While we didn't have it written on the sheet that, generally that was the intent. We didn't put on the sheet that any pavers that would reference previous council action to remove something would not be considered. Didn't think we really had to add that, but what we'll do now to kind of eliminate that is let the bridge committee review before they're ordered.
Yes, my confusion is that though you're saying names and donors, but there's clearly 3 or 4 pavers.
I said generally the intent was to recognize donors and names. Generally, yeah, there was no criteria.
But going forward, there's going to be criteria.
No, they would be reviewed by the Bicentennial Bridge Committee.
I guess I'm not really getting the question answered. What gives you the authority as the Bicentennial Bridge Committee to direct city staff to remove pavers?
I asked because those did not conform to what council had previously done. It's different because there is government speech that we can regulate what's in city right of way and what's on city property, and council had already made that decision to remove certain language. And I felt that that was referencing a previous council action. So I took it upon myself to make that action based on
mayor or
previous,
vice-
as mayor and as the chair of the Bicentennial Bridge Committee.
was authority within the city, direct city staff to do.
Sure, and I'm sure if I directed staff to do something that they did not feel was necessary to do, that they could have talked to me and we could have brought it here. But that is not on staff. That is on me 100%. I felt very certain that that was a fix that needed to be done. And certainly if council wanted to do something different, that the option is available. I think something else that sets this a little bit apart is I did reach out to the donor, the original donor. I called Ms. Vogel twice and spoke with her, and in fact, called her that evening and had a very good conversation about it. And during that conversation, she did say that if the pavers were to be removed, that she would like to have them back. I had a good conversation. I felt very confident after talking with her that while that was not what she wanted to happen, that if that were to happen, that they would not be destroyed, they would be given back to her, and that she would receive a full refund.
So for full clarification, we are going to have a policy developed, voted on by the Bicentennial Bridge Committee moving forward.
No,
No, it's just going to be on a case-by-case basis.
yeah, I didn't say there was a policy. This is generally to recognize donors and supporters.
But don't you think that's where the crux of the issue is that we don't have a policy?
No, I think in this particular issue, it is because council had a previous action to remove an item that, and this referenced that item.
So unilaterally, you made that decision to remove the pavers without consulting the rest of the Bicentennial Bridge Committee. You made that on your own.
Yes, the only person I consulted was the donor. Councilman Spicer. Who's on the Bicentennial Bridge Committee? I'm the chair of the committee. We have Bob Gilbert, Jim Crabtree, Sharon Knott, Cindy Schneiders. Who I'm missing. I can look at it. I can get it to you because I know I forgot somebody, and that's really, that would. But thanks for putting me on the spot. You know how it is when you got to think of everybody's name on your committees, but Bob Gilbert, Sharon Knott, Cindy Schneiders, Jim Crabtree, myself. Diane Gillespie, thank you. I know. I knew I would, and I'm so sorry, Diane. Lord. Anyway, yes, so yeah, I'll review and make sure I didn't miss anyone else, but yeah, thank you. And while we're talking about the Bicentennial Bridge Committee volunteers, it's an amazing group of people. We met, like I mentioned before, we met almost weekly for the last several years, almost on a weekly basis. So they've put a lot of time in. Probably the least amount of time on the subject that you're talking about, but really a lot of time, a lot of hours, a lot of effort into this project. So good opportunity for me to thank them for all they've done. Councilman Spencer.
So I guess this is a question for you, Mr. Mormon. Is there a possibility of legal action concerning speech?
You mean government speech?
I'd be redress to get too specific, but this particular issue doesn't hold a lot of concern for me. Some protections be able to take advantage of. Be happy to expand on that if desired by the city council, but I wouldn't want to get into too many specifics.
Just a few other points of question, though. ARPA funds. To Ms. Marash. With the new lax on restrictions, Is there an opportunity to use some of those ARPA funds to offset some of the potential cost in bonding for our wastewater by chance?
I don't know there's been any decision on what to do with ARPA funds, so it's really, sure there's creative ways to do many things, but it's the best answer I have.
Kind of circle the wagons on that. I hope we start really having some in-depth discussions on how we're going to proceed with these funds. I think we have a real opportunity ahead of us to spend those funds wisely. Which kind of ties into also, I hope we have another opportunity to discuss with our lobbyists, have some discussion on legislative priorities as well. I think Councilman Graham has mentioned before that sometimes the lobbyists have come and talked to the group as a council to kind of, spitball some priorities for potential legislative agenda items. So do that as well. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kroll or Councilman Hensley?
I was going to say, for the Finance Committee meeting, we do have an item on to start talking about how the committee wants to recommend to the council to proceed with the expenditure and usage of the ARPA funds.
So let not your heart be troubled. Well, we'll start that convo on Thursday, and I'm at this point, glad that we waited, because the final rules are significantly different than what we've been operating under. So glad we haven't committed more of those funds at this point. Thank you.
And we do speak with our lobbyist as well, and we usually start that as the session year begins with priorities, and we also begin with our standing committee chairs to have initial discussions, and then the full council gets discussions and updates and opportunities. And if you have any, we always ask that you go through Mr. Molman. I'm glad you mentioned that, being a newer council member, that you may have not been through legislative session, but certainly Mr. Molman is in very frequent communication as well. And typically then as session begins, we will be getting regular emails of updates on a consistent basis too. Councilman Spicer, yes. A response. What do you mean? I sent email to the chair. I think I shared that with council. I thought I did. Yeah, I did. I see head shaking. I did share that with council, where I mentioned that the date of our meeting and encouraged them to watch for full discussion of what was said. So they've been made aware.
But there's no
Yeah.
answer, there's no response given from Parks and Rec commission or director regarding merit increases?
I didn't ask for a response. What I told them was that we had the council discussion and asked them to review the meeting of everything that was said.
That was a
Thank you. Any further? Thank you. Councilman Fitzwater.
Circle back. I just want to make sure that I've got accurate information. We're comfortable that Ms. Vogel is satisfied with the.
I wouldn't say she's satisfied. I would say that she would prefer that her statement remain as it was. So I did reach out to her first initially to have a conversation with her. So I would not say that. I would say her original desire would be to keep it there, and probably still is. During the conversation, realizing what could happen with that, as it did reference the previous council decision, I think realizing that it could be removed, just as the other marker was, I think her desire was that it not be destroyed, that she be able to keep that, keep the pavers.
My understanding, and I did not hear, but I think she was on the radio this morning talking about the issue. Concern is for the city. I think Councilman Spencer raised some good issues in regard to putting some parameters around kind of situations so that y'all don't get pulled back in. I think my understanding is she tried to adjustments to the wording so that it didn't reflect back on the stated objection to the marker and the monument was stone. I think she felt misled after reading what was on the application, the fact that her check was cashed, the markers were made, I assume it's city expense, put in the ground and then taken out. So I think it would help all of us if we close that loop. I'm not sure that she is satisfied yet.
No, like I said, no. And if you think that, yes, the language was not the same, no, it wouldn't fit on there. Let's be real, it wouldn't fit on there. So while it referenced that, clearly it referenced that. So I acted on what the council's decision was. I wouldn't say it was my decision, it was the council's. I mean, what it was is I was referencing the council's decision. It was my decision to remove them based on the council's decision from the past.
Council's decision was based on the whole marker, not what she put on the paver.
Well, and if there was a lot of debate and there was a lot of discussion about it. So while people may want to make this about whether they agree or not with the language, that is not what this is about. What it is about is it referenced the marker that was removed. So what you're saying, Councilman Fitzwater, is that the language was changed. So changed from what? Changed from the marker. So it referenced the marker. Clearly, the reference was to the marker that council had previously taken action to remove.
I'm just trying to make a recommendation that the community doesn't understand the nuances that we've discussed tonight. There's still some frustration in the community from the first move. I think we all agreed at that time that nobody I'm aware of was comfortable with the Daughters of the Confederacy.
Let me simplify. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying,
Okay.
the discussion around the marker at that time was because of that language and that reference on the marker. Now, I know there are people in the community that don't like the language in there. They think it comes from a negative versus positive. I mean, we can argue that. I mean, reasonable people would argue that. I assume we all got emails with some suggested language. What I'm trying to counsel is there's frustration in the community about yet a second decision that most people interpreted did close that loop and take out the objectionable piece, yet it was still taken off. I didn't make the decision. Decision was made. I'm just saying we ought to talk about why the decision was try to close this loop so it's not a continuous discussion. Because again,
Why the decision was made to remove the pavers? Or are you talking about the rock? What are you talking about?
no, the rock, the decision was made. I mean, there was offensive language on there. I mean, I tried to put an amendment out that would get to some of the language that was sent to us that would have put a clarifier on it. That decision's passed. I mean, but at the time it was said that the Daughters of the Confederacy was the piece that was objectionable. Although there was, as I admit, there was some concern about the reverse way the language was versus a positive. I mean, that's arguable. I don't know why they did that in 1937. But there's a disconnect now. If the objectionable language, not the debatable language, the objectionable was taken off, yet they were still taken out. Just there are people that don't understand it. I'm just saying as a council, we ought to close that loop. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I'll simplify it, and it did reference that rock, which was a council decision to remove off of city right-of-way.
I read what was on those papers a number of times. I don't see any reference to rock on there. I'll admit I could have missed it.
Councilman
So
Lester.
I just want to go on record to say that I think the mayor made the right decision. And I don't agree with you. The main thing was about UDC, United Daughters of Confederacy, although that was a big part of it. But it was also basically content, giving recognition to Sterling Price, something that he was compelled because he knew he couldn't, or he thought he couldn't be successful. Say that put him as the prominent one related to that event as part of the issue too. We had those discussions from July, middle of July. Finally, we acted on it toward the end of October. Discussions in Historic Preservation Commission, discussions in each of two of the committees, multiple discussions at City Council. Many people, this room was filled. You were here. Yes. All of this was discussed. Both there was United Daughters of Confederacy and their propaganda campaign at that time, and the content of it, putting General Price, recognizing him as a prime actor. So I just, I think that in itself is not the right emphasis. Say someone should be recognized in history because they're compelled to make a decision just sends the wrong message. He was compelled because of the citizens and the union groups here.
And talking under your breath is rude. I just think, Councilman Spicer, so if you have something to say, certainly say it to everybody. But really what this is really about was that I felt pretty clearly that it did reference, while it didn't have room to put everything and maybe had been changed from the rock that had been removed. So it's pretty simple. Councilman Spencer.
Yes, so back to the, one of my original questions with merit increases for Parks and Rec. Steve, did we fulfill our obligation here for question?
I'd say yes to that. I think council had a thorough discussion about that, and that's been communicated to the Parks.
The chair of the Parks Commission.
And
I don't know what happened after that.
but there was no corresponding response from them to over an hour debate and discussion of merit increases. So I think it's worthy of the commission to communicate to the council what their ongoing stance and policy is going to be to merit increases that were not budgeted this year or previous years. I think that was the question. You only pose it in a text or an email. I think we're worthy of an answer.
Yeah, I sent them an email. I sent it all to council as well and kept you all very informed of the communication that was had between us along with his response. So that was all sent to council and completely open. And I sent it to everyone. And
With a lack of response, should we maybe send a registered letter?
I don't know what response you need because it's outlined what they can and can't do. They can take our advice or not. They know what the council's intent is very clearly. And by watching the meeting, they can see all of that. It's not something I'm going to summarize in a few sentences. It needs to be watched, like a lot of our council meetings need to be word for word and watched exactly what was said. And I think that is the best way to communicate it to them. And I said to watch the council meeting and see exactly what was said.
Well, Mr. Spalding, what is going to be your stance on that?
Response for President Leichel. He received the direction from you all. So,
Do you anticipate him giving a response?
I can't speak for him. I can certainly ask him.
Any further new business? Any further questions for the mayor or anybody? We've already addressed item 19, no closed session. Item 20, any unfinished business? And item 21, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. All right, everybody have a
Aye.
great evening. Thank you.